Man, you ever have one of those moments where the world just stops? Like, 1 second you're rushing to a meeting, coffee in hand, thinking about nothing but your next deal, and then bam, something hits you so hard it flips your whole life upside down? That's what happened to me, Ethan Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Properties, on a chilly November morning in downtown Chicago. I was about to slide into my sleek silver Audi, ready to seal a multi-million-dollar land deal, when this scrawny, wide-eyed 12-year-old named Jamal came tearing across the parking lot, screaming, "Mr. Caldwell, don't get in the car." I froze, hand on the door handle, my security team already moving to grab this kid who looked like he'd just sprinted out of a nightmare. The whole parking lot went quiet, all my suit and tie execs staring like they'd seen a ghost. Jamal was panting, his beat-up sneakers slipping on the wet asphalt, his brown eyes locked on mine with this desperate, "Don't you dare ignore me" intensity. "Please, sir," he gasped, "something's wrong with your Carrie saw it last night." Now, I'm not the kind of guy who stops for just anyone. I've built a real estate empire by keeping my eyes on the prize, not chasing distractions. But there was something about this kid, something raw, something real that made me pause. Jamal, I later learned, was the son of Maria Lopez, our night janitor. For 15 years, Maria had been cleaning our offices after hours, mopping floors, emptying trash cans, keeping our glass tower spotless while we all went home to our cushy lives. Nobody noticed her. Nobody noticed Jamal either, who'd tag along during school breaks, doing homework in the lobby or wandering the halls, invisible to guys like me. But that morning, he wasn't invisible. He was a hurricane, and he was about to blow my world apart. "Hold up," I said, waving off my head of security, who was already reaching for Jamal. My VP, Greg Larson, rolled his eyes, adjusting his Rolex like this was all a waste of his precious time. "Ethan, come on, we've got investors waiting," he muttered, his voice dripping with that smug, "let's not entertain the kid" vibe. I ignored him, crouching down to meet Jamal's eyes. "What did you see, kid?" I asked, half expecting some wild story. But what he said next sent a chill down my spine. "Last night," Jamal said, his voice shaking but steady, "I was waiting for my mom in the basement level, near the garage. I saw two guys messing with your car. One had a scar, like a half moon, right here." He pointed to his forehead. The other was tall, bald, with a dragon tattoo crawling up his neck. My stomach dropped. I knew those guys, not employees, not even close. They were muscle for hire, the kind of people you don't cross unless you're ready to pay a price. "They were under your car for, 20 minutes, Jamal went on. "I heard one say, 'It's set for Wednesday morning. He won't know what hit him.'" Wednesday. That was today. I glanced at my Audi, gleaming under the parking lot lights, and suddenly it didn't look so inviting. Greg scoffed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Ethan, you're not seriously listening to this, are you? He's a kid. Probably saw a couple of mechanics and spun a story." But Jamal didn't flinch. He stepped closer, his small fists clenched, and looked Greg dead in the eye. "I know what I saw, sir. And I know every sound in this building at night. Those guys weren't fixing anything." Maria came running out then, still in her faded janitor's uniform, her face a mix of panic and shame. "Jamal, what are you doing?" she whispered, grabbing his arm, her eyes darting to me like she was waiting for me to fire her on the spot. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm so sorry, it's just a kid. He doesn't know." But I cut her off, my voice softer than I meant it to be. "Maria, your boy's trying to tell me something important. Let him talk." Greg let out a groan, muttering about our big meeting with some overseas clients. But I wasn't listening. I was watching Jamal, this kid who'd probably never been in a room with people like us, standing there like he was ready to take on the world. "Jamal," I said, "what else did you hear?" He took a deep breath, like he was replaying it in his head. The guy with the scar said, "Problems solved by Wednesday." The other one laughed, said, "He'll learn not to mess with the right people." And they mentioned something about Lakefront Heights. That hit me like a punch. Lakefront Heights was a project I'd been fighting tooth and nail, a luxury condo deal that'd displace a whole neighborhood of working-class families. I'd been getting pressure to sign off on it, even some thinly veiled threats, but I'd held off. Now, it was starting to make sense. I called my security chief, Daniels, and told him to check the car now. Greg threw his hands up, all dramatic, like I was wasting his morning. Ethan, this is insane. We're going to be late because of some kid's imagination. I shot him a look that shut him up. Greg, if there's even a chance this kid's right, I'm not taking it. 10 minutes later, Daniels came back, his face pale as a sheet. Boss, he said, there's a device under the car, wired to the ignition, set to go off at 8:45, right when you'd be heading out. The parking lot went dead silent. Greg's jaw dropped, his fancy tie suddenly looking like a noose. The other execs just stared, like they couldn't process what they'd heard. I knelt down in front of Jamal, my heart pounding. Kid, you just saved my life. How do I thank you? Jamal didn't miss a beat. Find out who did this, sir. 'Cause if they tried once, they'll try again. Maria gripped his hand, her eyes wet with pride and fear. This wasn't just about saving me, Anna Maria. It was bigger, and we all knew it. I took Jamal and Maria up to my office, away from the gawking execs. Tell me everything, I said, settling into my chair, still trying to wrap my head around how a 12-year-old had seen what none of us had. Jamal sat across from me, Maria next to him, looking like she was bracing for trouble. Last night, Jamal said, I saw papers on your desk about Lakefront Heights. The guys in the garage mentioned it too. They said, he'll sign after Wednesday. Like they knew you'd be gone. Maria chimed in, her voice quiet but firm. Jamal's always here during breaks. He notices things adults don't. He's quiet, but he sees everything. I leaned back, my mind racing. Someone wanted me dead to push that deal through. And not just someone inside. Jamal, I said, you mentioned a director meeting those guys. Who was it? He hesitated, glancing at his mom, then back at me. It was Mr. Larson. He came down to the garage after they left, shook hands with them like they were buddies. My blood ran cold. Greg Larson, my right-hand man for a decade, the guy I'd trusted with half my deals. The pieces were falling into place, and they weren't pretty. All right, kid, I said, leaning forward. You know this building better than anyone. You got a plan. Jamal's eyes lit up, like he'd been waiting for this. There's a server room on the 25th floor, never watched by security. All the company's emails, calls, everything's backed up there. If Mr. Larson's in on this, the proof's in that room. Maria looked nervous, but Jamal was already moving, like a kid on a mission. Mom, he said, you always told me doing what's right means taking risks. I'm not letting them hurt Mr. Caldwell. For the next 2 hours, Jamal led me through the building like he owned its service hallways, back stairwells, places I didn't even know existed. This kid moved like a shadow, dodging cameras, timing the guards' rounds like he'd studied them for years. How'd you learn all this? I asked, half amazed. He shrugged, disabling a motion sensor with a trick he'd picked up from his cousin. When you're invisible, you see everything. People don't notice me, so I notice them. In the server room, Jamal worked some kind of magic. My cousin taught me a little coding, he said, pulling up files like he was born for this. Said it's power for kids like me. In 40 minutes, we had it all. Emails between Greg and a shady real estate syndicate, voice recordings of him planning my accident, bank transfers to the 2 goons Jamal saw. The kicker? A memo outlining how Greg would take over after my death, pushing Lakefront Heights through the board like it was nothing. I read it all, my anger mixing with a grudging respect for how bold this betrayal was. Jamal, I said, there's a big investor meeting tomorrow. Greg's gonna push his agenda there. You thinking what I'm thinking? He grinned, a spark in his eyes. Expose him. Right in front of everyone he's trying to impress. Nothing hurts worse than losing face. Maria watched her son, torn between fear and awe. I could see it in her eyes. She'd spent 15 years being invisible, and now her kid was calling the shots. The next day, the boardroom was packed investors, press, the whole circus. Greg was in his element, all charm and confidence, pitching Lakefront Heights like it was his golden ticket. After yesterday's unfortunate incident, he said, flashing his million-dollar smile, "We're ready to move forward with projects that'll transform Chicago." I stood at the back, Jamal and Maria beside me, the kid holding a tablet he'd rigged to the presentation system. I gave him a nod, and he hit a key. The screens lit up with Greg's emails, his voice booming through the speakers. "Caldwell's out of the picture by Wednesday. Prep the contracts." The room went dead quiet. Greg's face turned ghost white, then red, then purple. This is a hack," he stammered, but Jamal wasn't done. Financial records flashed up $250,000 wired to the scar-faced guy and his tattooed buddy. I stepped forward, my voice calm but sharp. "Greg, you thought you could kill me and waltz into my chair? In front of these people?" The investors were frozen, the press scribbling like mad. Greg looked around, desperate, but he was done. "Who got this?" he spat, his voice cracking. "Who had access to my files?" I put my hand on Jamal's shoulder. "This kid, Jamal Lopez, son of our janitor, Maria. He saved my life because he saw what you thought nobody would." Greg stared at Jamal, the boy he'd sneered at yesterday, and I swear you could see his world collapse. "You?" he whispered, like he couldn't believe it. Jamal didn't blink. "You thought nobody was watching, Mr. Larson. But I was. And now everyone knows who you are." The feds walked in right then. I'd tipped them off the night before. They cuffed Greg in front of the whole room, his shouts echoing as they dragged him out. "I built this company," he yelled, but nobody was listening. The investors clapped, slow at first, then loud, as I turned to Jamal and Maria. "Jamal, you're our new security consultant. Maria, you're head of night operations, effective immediately." Maria's eyes filled with tears, but she stood tall, her son grinning beside her. "Lakefront Heights? Canceled. Those families got to keep their homes." 6 months later, Caldwell Properties was a different place. Jamal, now 13, was a rock star giving talks to execs from other companies about his Hidden Eyes protocol, using janitors, guards, anyone we'd overlooked to spot threats. Maria ran our operations like a pro, turning her years of being unseen into a strategy that saved us millions. Me? I learned something I'd forgotten in my climb to the top. The people we ignore often know more than we ever will. Greg? He's rotting in a federal pen, 20 years for attempted murder and fraud. His mansion's gone, his name's mud. He sits there, reading about Jamal's Rise Our Kids speaking at business schools now, full scholarship lined up for college. I heard he mutters to his cellmates, "How did janitor's kid ruin me?" But that's the thing. Jamal didn't ruin him. Greg ruined himself the second he thought he could bury people like Jamal and Maria. We took the money from Lakefront Heights and built a community center instead, music classes, job training, the works. Jamal's foundation for kids from tough neighborhoods is growing, and I'm backing it all the way. That morning, when he yelled at me to stop, he didn't just save my life. He showed me what leadership really is, listening to the people nobody else hears. So what do you think? Was Jamal just lucky, or is there something broken in how we see people, how we decide who matters? Drop a comment, tell me your take. Have you ever been overlooked, or seen someone step up when nobody expected it? Let's talk about it. And if this story hit you, share it. Maybe it'll remind someone to listen before it's too late.